Hi, I'm Ben. I'm located here in Wichita, Kansas with Team Home Hero. I want to get in how to buy a home in Wichita, Kansas. You may have bought a house elsewhere or had a past experience, but I wanted to go over what it's like in today's day and age of how to buy a house. Before we get into all that, go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, share, depending on which platform you're on, and we'll go from there. So what we're going to cover today is how to buy a home in Wichita, Kansas on wichitahomehero.com. You might have seen all the different content we have on there for education, local Wichita, Kansas content, how to buy a house, how to sell a house, how to build a house, everything you could think of when it comes to for local Wichita, Kansas content. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Oh, and stick around till the end so you can see the special bonus tip I got at the end of this recording that you may or may not know about. So without that, let's go ahead and get into it. And I'll start sharing my screen and bring up this infographic. So this gives you an idea of the general home buying process overview. This obviously doesn't cover everything in detail, but this at least give you a pretty good idea of what it takes to buy a house here in Wichita, Kansas. And as you can see, there's kind of a little roadmap we'll follow here. I'll give you as much value, as much insight into how this works so that you can be more prepared of buying a house here in Wichita, Kansas. So first thing is you start here, you decide, I want to buy a home. That comes with it first. Typically, we meet with each other in office, but a lot of times too, we've been doing more video consults like this and doing video calls, whether showing a house or even meeting like this online where we can talk through it. But also this video can kind of help you be better prepared to eliminate some of the steps in the process for you to learn from a distance so that when you're ready, you can just reach out and go from there. So one of the first important things you want to do is kind of check out what your financial capabilities are, because the worst thing you can do is start looking at a house, get all excited about it, and then not be able to buy it. And I hate it when that happens where people get their hopes up, get all excited, and then they can't do it. So really the first step you're wanting to do is to get pre-approved, and I recommend a local Wichita, Kansas lender. The one that we recommend is Janie Carr with Flat Branch Home Loans. She's a tremendous lender with not only affordability, but also reliability, because some of these larger national lenders can have lower rates, lower costs, that kind of thing, but they're incredibly risky as far as whether they're going to be able to close the loan, the appraisal value is going to come in. And what I come to find too is they have a lot of deceptive lending practices that don't actually shake out that well for you in the end. But again, that's where you have us as your realtor to really help you comb through those financial options and help explain to you how the lenders work and what your options are there, which I'll give you a bonus tip at the end, and it has to do with lenders if you stick around and watch till the end. But once you got pre-approved and you kind of know what your loan product is, what your down payment is, what your monthly payment is, those kinds of things, which I can help you assess what's appropriate for you. Then we'll start looking at houses, both online and in person. Once you get with us, we'll set you up on a custom property alert. It's more accurate and faster than Zillow. And at the same time, where we really see a lot of value is that we have an online client care department that specifically just helps you with finding houses online. They're not licensed agents. They're not salespeople. They're more of a customer service role to engage your service experience better, kind of like a concierge for helping you find houses online. Setting property alerts up, taking notes for what you're liking, communicating any questions you have, any special considerations, really having that, hand-holding, white glove experience that most people are looking for when it comes to real estate. So we have a dedicated person on staff just for that. And we're continuing to build out that department, so there may be more in the future. But we'll look at a lot online, and really it's a process of elimination. And what can really help you tremendously, we found, is that I know a lot of people are on a lot of different websites, and if you use Zillow and Realtor.com, they're very user-friendly, but they tend to have a lot of bad data, inaccurate data. So if you use those sites in conjunction with our site, wichitahomehero.com, that gives you the most accurate listings up to date. You also have us as an agent on the back end. And what will really help is if you unsubscribe from all the other sites, all the other things you're on, and just keep it in one place. If you just come to us, we're the one-stop shop. And that way you won't have to get worried about getting bombarded by all kinds of calls, all kinds of emails, all kinds of messaging. Just come to us and we'll get you taken care of and you'll be good to go. That'll help narrow it down and really make this a more solid, certain process. So once we do look at houses online and we decide, all right, we want to look at some of these in person, we usually go look at about 3 at a time. And then from there, like, we'll be asking you what you like, what you not like. How do you feel about the size of the living room? How do you feel about everything that goes on with it, and really get a feel for what you like, what you don't like. And the more that we work with you, you kind of develop what you like in the process and what you don't. And the more we get to know what you're looking for. So when the right house pops up, we can jump on it right away. Because as you've probably seen, these houses are going super fast, which is why it's important to get this part out of the way, get the game plan together, get your financing lined up, and then mentally and emotionally prepare you to where when it's time that the right house pops up, we're ready to jump on it and do what it takes to win and get that house, which we're very good at here in Team Home Hero, negotiating and putting together offers that are very compelling, which we'll get into here in a second, which is the next step, getting a little bit ahead of myself. But we look at 3, and if you like those 3, then we'll submit an offer on one. If you don't, then we kind of reassess and reevaluate, maybe look at another 3 in person. But usually it's about house 3 to 6 that people have found one that they like and want to offer on and want to get. And usually if it goes after 6 houses that we see in person, because we're going to see these things in person to offer on them, to buy them. If it's something that's not going to fit, we can already see that online before we ever have to waste your time of going out and showing it to you. You can kind of already see, like, yeah, that one's not going to work. That one's not going to fit. So you're going to look at hundreds of houses online before you look at them in person. And when you go to look at them in person, you're looking at them to offer on them, to buy them. And when we go look at those, not only myself, but my team is very knowledgeable on houses. So we're going to look at, like, how good is the foundation? How old is the roof? What's the age of the HVAC, the plumbing, all the mechanicals, the electrical, really assess, is this thing a good house? Point out the good things, point out the bad things, and really help you evaluate to make a decision, a yes or no on that. Because we're not there to sell you into a house. We're there to help you transact the transaction. I'll just use that same word twice, and really provide more of a concierge and facilitation of the sale so that you get true representation, so that everything that you do want is happening on your behalf, and be more of an advisor and a consultant than, a salesperson like people are typically used to when it comes to, the salesperson title that they may think of us. So anyway, that's kind of how it works to go look at houses. If you just text or call us, we have to coordinate 3 schedules, yours, the seller's, and ours, to fit you in with that. We have a system that's very open to being available for you to go look at houses when you're available and when you get to it, because you got to be on it quick with it all. And you'll be getting emails from us with daily and instant property alerts. So every morning I'll send you everything new. Then also if something comes up at like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, it'll send to you then as well. So once we looked at houses, we're looking at them all in person. We're thoroughly evaluating them. We'll submit the offer and negotiate an offer for win-win terms. And that's a big piece of this, where we go above and beyond to talk to the listing agent, find out what's the most important to the seller, and really learn how can we best position this offer to win in this market. Because in a lot of ways, winning the house is the win in this current market that we're in right now. Also needing to know, like, do we need to negotiate in your closing costs ahead of time? Because maybe you're a first-time home buyer and you have the cash for the down payment, but maybe you don't have the cash for the closing costs, but you can afford the monthly payment. And so a lot of times, if we need to negotiate in your closing costs, we need to know that ahead of time. But that's where we'll work closely with the lender that you work with to find out what are the closing costs, so we know ahead of time. What other kind of fees should we expect, so that we can really look out for you in the middle of this transaction, so that you're fully aware of everything that goes on with everything. So when it comes down to that, we'll submit our best and final offer, talk you through how those different scenarios work. Every scenario is different. So even though I have this standard process on here, every real estate deal is different. And that's where you need a strategic consultant like ourselves to really help you best craft your custom situation of your situation and the seller's situation. So then once offer gets accepted, that's when we'll have what's called a fully executed contract, and we'll have to start submitting that to the title company, to the lender, to the listing agent, to all parties involved that need it. And there'll be earnest money that goes down with that contract, usually about 1% goes with it. So that's one cash outlay that you want to account for. So if you're buying a $100,000 house, you're going to need $1,000 to put down as earnest money, and that goes towards your down payment. So let's say you're going on an FHA loan at 3.5% down. You're going to need $3,500 down for your down payment, but then you put $1,000 down to your earnest money. So then at closing, what you bring to the table would be $2,500 for your down payment, because you already paid in $1,000 from the start of the contract. And from contract to close, it's about 30 to 45 days, depending on your loan product. Just to give you an idea of how long it takes to go from contract to close, which is the fun part. But that's why loans and houses take so long to close. They're not something where you just like sign a contract to move in like a rental. You know, once you get it under contract, there's all these steps and these processes that got to go on in order to get it to closing with everything going on. So from there, we'll submit all the documents appropriately. Then we have the inspection period, which is kind of like the second fragile point of this transaction. And I say fragile point because this is where potential repair requests comes up, potential deal killing situations come up, but that's where Team Home Hero and I are very good about making sure that when we do offer on houses, we've already been thoroughly evaluating, thoroughly dissecting them, trying to get to as many things we can visually see up front and address up front. Like Federal Pacific breaker boxes are a common one. Those have to be replaced for FHA and VA, and those are a major fire hazard that it's like, go negotiate that in the offer from the start so that we don't get tied up with earnest money, tied into a contract, pay for an inspection to find that out. We at Team Home Hero can find that out or see those things ahead of time, pre-negotiate them, save you a lot of time, a lot of hassle, a lot of money in this situation, because at the end of the day, we're not trying to sell you a lemon. How dumb of that would that be of us if we sold you a lemon or a bad house and then you want to go sell it a year or two from now? Now we got to sell this piece of crap house. I mean, I know most people don't think of it that way, but that's kind of the truth that goes with it. But at the end of the day too, like, we really want you to feel and understand we're looking out for you in this transaction, and we're not there to kill a deal for you either or bad talk your house, but we just want to make sure it's structurally sound, structurally in good shape, that you're making a smart long-term decision so that this thing can not be a money pit and not be, you know, an eyesore of everything going forward, so that it's a good quality house with everything goes with it. So once the inspection is done, let's back up a little bit. The inspector will go out and inspect the property for about 2 hours ahead of time. Then we'll meet at the house and go over whatever he found in person, see if there's anything we want him to look at specifically while we're there on our address. And we can go over his findings kind of while we're there and evaluate it. You know, I or my team will be there going through the report with you on everything and really breaking it down and seeing things in person, what he found and what's going on. From there, there's basically three things that can happen. We can either ask for him to fix certain things, we can ask for money off, or we can potentially walk away from the deal with your earnest money coming back to you if buyer and seller can't agree on repairs. So that's kind of like a second negotiating point, if you will. It's not really the time to ask for a boatload of money off just because like you feel like you can. It's also not the time to take into account like cosmetic repairs or things that we already knew about ahead of time. That should have already been pre-negotiated with the offer that we sent in. This is really there just to test everything out, climb on the roof, you know, make sure all the electrical, the plumbing, all those things are working, that, you know, we as agents and buyers can't test ourselves because we have a conflict of interest. Obviously, something happens, something breaks, you know, we could be accused of tampering, and we can't do that. We have to have a neutral third party who's an inspector come in and, you know, arbitrarily evaluate what's going on there. So that's how the inspection process works. Depending on the size of the house, that can run, and the inspector, that can run anywhere from $225 all the way up to $500 to $700, depending on how many and what types of inspections you get. You know, there's your general inspection, but you can also get a sewer scope inspection. You can also get a radon inspection. Termite inspection typically comes with the general inspection, but there's basically an inspection period that's set up in the contract. We do 10 business days because we want to find something right away, if we're going to find something, and nip it in the butt and get to that. So really, that first week is contract acceptance, submit the title work, and then inspections. We got to coordinate my schedule, the inspector schedule, the seller schedule, your schedule, 4 schedules in order to put that inspection in place. So just keep that in mind, how many things we're taking into account there when we're setting that up. And then from there, we go into the appraisal and underwriting process for those contingencies, where the lender's really going to scrutinize your documents. They're going to ask you for all kinds of ridiculous amount of paperwork. I'm just telling you up front to be patient with that, get them exactly like they want it, exactly like they say they need it, because this is the hardest thing about getting a loan right now and anymore, is that they scrutinize you harder than ever in order to get through true final underwriting, especially if you're self-employed, especially if you're commission income. But this is where Janie Carr is awesome for getting people through closing, getting people through that process while staying level-headed and crazy, because I know it's a crazy, anxious time, but that's where we're here to protect you and help you through this and calmly make smart decisions throughout this whole thing. So that's the final underwriting piece. The piece before that, though, was the appraisal. And the appraiser, that's going to run you about $450 to $700, again, depending on the lender and what they charge you. So that's another cash outlay to plan for, which we'll get into all the cash outlays here at the end, and I'll give you a summary so you can kind of know what to prepare for and what to expect. But the appraisal contingency has to do with a couple things. One, the appraiser's coming out to make sure it meets whatever type of loans guidelines. So if it's FHA, it's got to meet the appraisal conditions for FHA. VA is one of the most scrutinized type of appraisal conditions, that the property's got to be in pristine shape. Then you have conventional, which is one of the most lenient. And then you have a few other secondary alternative loan products like USDA, which is also a very scrutinized appraisal condition process. And the other piece is that they're coming out to evaluate how much the lender is willing to lend on. Now, I know this is commonly thought that the appraisers come out and tell you what the property's worth. That's not necessarily what they're doing. What they're saying, they're coming out to evaluate is how much the lender is willing to appraise on it. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that's what it's worth, which I'll get into that in another video, but not right now. But the appraiser comes out and he's checking two things. How much will the lender loan on it? And what kind of condition is it in to meet the guidelines that are necessary for that type of loan. And so once that is done and satisfactory, that'll be passed through. In the event of a low appraisal, again, there's three options that can happen there. One is that the seller can require the buyer to bring the remaining amount of difference in cash to get the agreed upon price. So let's say the house appraises for $250, but you had it under contract for $260. You can get the loan for $250,000, but you're going to need to bring another $10,000 in cash in order to satisfy the $260,000 sale price that buyer and seller agreed on. The other side of this is that what happens a lot of the times too is that the seller will adjust the agreed purchase price down to the appraisal price of $250,000 in our example, and basically just eat the fact that they couldn't make another $10,000, because even though they wanted to sell it for more, the lender wouldn't appraise it and lend on that much. And so the buyer couldn't get financing to that amount, to where if buyer and seller can't agree, the third option happens, which is the deal falls apart, buyer gets to earn his money back, and we both walk away from the deal because we couldn't get our financing contingency satisfied. So that's where you do still have an inspection and an appraisal contingency that's got to pass through here, of why this takes 30 to 45 days to close, instead of just being able to move in right away. So once you're past those contingency periods, you'll get what's called a final closing disclosure, which has everything broken down like to the penny of what you're going to owe. Because before that, we can give you estimates and ideas of where your payment's going to be. But then once we get to final closing disclosure, that's where it comes down to like, here's your exact amounts that you're going to see at closing. Here's the exact amount you need to bring to closing, which we'll get into in a sec. That's the fun part. And final walkthrough is where we go walk through like the day before or day of closing to check on any repairs that they made, make sure it was in the same condition that, when we offered on and we bought it, and then any final considerations for measurements or things like that. Same with the inspections, another opportunity to go back to the house, measure things, see it again, show your friends, whatever. So we'll visit the house a couple more times after our first initial showing before you actually close on it and see it. So you'll see the house like 3 times in the middle of this process before you actually get to closing, because closing is a formality. No surprises should happen here. No last minute things should be going on. No last minute paperwork. This is where the fun, happy things go on. I'll bring you a bottle of champagne or wine, or whatever other thing you like, or if you don't drink, I'll bring you some other, token of gratitude and appreciation I have for making it through this thing and having a good time. And that's where you officially sign all the documents, put the deed in your name, get the keys to your house, all the tear-jerking, emotional, awesome things that go on at closing that really make this industry and this career worthwhile, and why I really love doing what I do. That's also where you'll bring your down payment and any remaining funds to close. So to summarize the amount of cash that you'll need to account for, you have your 1% earnest money to put down, your inspection that can be about $225 to $700, your appraisal that can be about $450 to $700, and then closing whatever your down payment amount is. So $100,000 house, $3,500 minus the $1,000 earnest money, about $2,500. Now, if you're paying your own closing costs, it'll be more than that. This is where we have an idea of it all, but I'd tell you to work very closely with your lender to make sure you understand the cash that's needed to buy a house, cash that's needed to close, especially in today's market where closing costs are having to be paid for by the buyer in order to win the house more and more with everything. And then after that, you close, turn all utilities on your name, start moving, start doing everything you need to. But really, that should give you a general overview of how this whole process works, 30 to 45 days for closing. And this gives you a pretty good idea, pretty good start of how it works in Wichita, Kansas for buying a home. Obviously, selling, you'd be on the other side, but that's another video I'll make. But that gives you a pretty good idea of everything. And now, I hope you've stuck around. If you have stuck around, thank you for that. I appreciate that. I'm going to give you kind of a secret insider tip that not everybody wants you to know this, but I'm going to tell you because I want to look out for you to know. And your lender may or may not like me for this, but at the end of the day, like, they should be telling you. So here's the thing. Lenders make money in two ways, and they make it one on their origination fee and two on the interest rates they're charging. So they all try to act like they're different, or, they try to be slick about what they're doing. But at the end of the day, the financial system is a fixed system, and it's based on a federal subprime rate, and what interest rate they charge you is up to them. And that's one way that they make money, depending on what interest rate they set up your loan for and then sell it off to the big lender. And then also it's the origination fee. I've seen some origination fees be zero, but then they have some kind of discounted or disguised discount points, origination points, where you're actually still paying it. A general rule of thumb, a good amount is about $1,000 is what a fair origination fee is. I've seen some lenders, though, charge $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, I think $6,000. No, I saw one that was $7,000. There's origination fee. That's literal direct money out of either your pocket or the seller that you're just paying straight to the lender for them to originate a loan that's the same service as any other lender that's out there. So each one of them has different fees, different charges, but you need to ask them, what is your origination fee up front? What is the interest rate you're charging me? And that's how you can compare lenders back and forth. Whether it's residential, whether it's commercial, it doesn't matter what type of lender it is. Lenders work within a fixed financial system. Like, you can't get all slick and move all these things around. It's a very confined situation. And I wanted you to know that as appreciation for watching this video. That's the bonus tip that you get to learn about the real estate financing side of things and everything goes with that. Appreciate you watching as always. Again, if you would, please like this video, comment, share it, subscribe it, depending on what platform you're on. If anything, go check out WichitaHomeHero.com for even more awesome videos like this. Learn more about the buying process, the selling process, building process, whatever you're looking into, just the general education process, Wichita local, and get to know us. And ideally, I'm trying to put all this value out there up front for you guys so that hopefully in return, you'll reciprocate that back and we get the opportunity to do business with you guys. But appreciate you watching. Talk to you guys later.